The seaside town of Mornington, Victoria, is the kind of place where nothing too extraordinary ever seems to happen. Tucked along Australia's coastline, it's the picture of quiet suburban living. Neighbors wave when they collect their mail, children ride bikes down cul-de-sacs, and the days roll on in a kind of calm routine. But in March of 2004, this peaceful town would be shaken to its core by a man who looked, at first glance, like the least likely suspect of all. That man's name was John Sharpe. Before we dive deeper, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our crime stories. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? John wasn't the kind of person anyone remembered for charm or charisma. In fact, most who knew him described him as socially awkward, detached, and often uncomfortable in conversations. At 40 years old, he lived in Mornington with his wife, Anna Kemp, and their baby daughter, Gracie. To outsiders, they were an ordinary family. John worked a steady job, Anna stayed home to care for their little girl, and they blended into suburban life with no sign of the darkness festering behind closed doors. Anna was different from her husband in almost every way. Where John was stiff and withdrawn, Anna was outgoing, kind, and affectionate. She adored Gracie, a sweet 20-month-old toddler with curly hair and a big smile. Anna's family loved her deeply, and even from afar, they could sense the struggles in her marriage. Friends noticed the distance between her and John, the way he rarely showed affection, the way he seemed uncomfortable even holding his own child. But few could imagine the storm building in John's mind. For months, tension simmered. John grew increasingly resentful, not just of his marriage, but of fatherhood itself. He viewed Gracie less as a joy and more as a burden, someone competing for Anna's attention. It was a chilling glimpse into a fractured psyche. And instead of seeking help, John nursed his frustrations in silence, convincing himself he was trapped in a life he didn't want. On the night of March 23, 2004, everything changed. The day had been unremarkable. Nothing signaled that Anna's life was about to end. But in the quiet of the evening, after an argument, John went into the garage and retrieved a weapon that no one would ever suspect, a speargun. He had purchased it months earlier, claiming it was for fishing. But he hadn't used it for sport. He'd been rehearsing, thinking, planning. When Anna finally went to bed, John crept into the bedroom, speargun in hand. The weapon was designed for the ocean, to pierce through fish underwater. Against a sleeping human being, it was brutally effective. Without hesitation, John fired the spear straight into Anna's head. The silence that followed was deafening. Anna was gone. The woman who had loved him despite his flaws, who had cared for his child, who had trusted him, was dead. But instead of remorse, John's mind turned instantly to lies. He had crossed a line he could never return from, and now he needed to cover it up. If you're enjoying this story, hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. In the hours after Anna's death, John began constructing a story. He told friends and relatives that Anna had stormed out after an argument. He suggested she had left him, possibly even with another man. To make the story more believable, John went a step further. He picked up Anna's mobile phone and began sending text messages to her family and friends, pretending to be her. The messages were cold, mechanical, and out of character. But to someone desperate for reassurance, they seemed believable, at least at first. "Don't worry about me, I need some space," one message said. Days turned into weeks, and John carried on the charade. He appeared calm, even casual, when speaking about his wife's absence. When relatives grew suspicious, he doubled down on his lies. He told Anna's mother she had left suddenly, without warning, and that he was just as confused as everyone else. Behind closed doors, however, John was already plotting his next move. Anna's disappearance was one thing. But in the eyes of the world, she had left behind something precious, her baby daughter, Gracie. If Anna had truly abandoned her family, why would she leave her child? That single inconsistency threatened to unravel John's story. To him, the solution was horrifyingly simple. Only a few days after murdering Anna, John turned on the one person left who trusted him unconditionally, his own daughter. He told himself it was necessary, that killing Gracie would make his story more believable. After all, if Anna had really abandoned them, then her baby would be gone too. In John's warped logic, his lies could only survive if he destroyed the evidence of the truth. And to John Sharpe, that evidence was his child. It's almost impossible to comprehend the coldness of that thought. A father is supposed to protect, nurture, and cherish his child. But John saw Gracie not as a blessing, but as a loose thread in the web of lies he was spinning. As he paced his Mornington home in the days following Anna's murder, he convinced himself he had no choice. To keep up appearances, to continue lying his way out of what he had done, he would need to commit one of the most unthinkable crimes imaginable. The monster inside John Sharpe was only just awakening. In the days after killing Anna, John Sharpe should have been overcome with grief. He should have realized the gravity of what he had done. But instead, his mind was consumed with calculation. He had built a story, a fragile web of lies, and in his mind, it could only survive if he erased every thread that might expose the truth. That meant turning his attention to the one person who remained, Gracie. Gracie was only 20 months old. She was innocent, defenseless, and too young to understand the world around her. To Anna, she was the center of her universe. To John, she was an obstacle, a constant reminder that his story didn't add up. If Anna had really abandoned her family, why would she have left her baby behind? Friends and relatives were already asking questions. And the more they pressed, the more John realized the danger. He convinced himself of something unthinkable, that the only way forward was to remove Gracie, just as he had removed Anna. A few nights later, he carried out his plan. John had already chosen his weapon, the same speargun he had used on Anna. He loaded it, stepped into Gracie's room, and did the unthinkable. The silence afterward was suffocating. A child's life extinguished in an instant, by the very person who should have been her protector. But John didn't stop there. His lies demanded action, demanded a cover-up. He wrapped Gracie's body and disposed of it in a way he thought would prevent discovery. In his mind, it was the only way to keep suspicion away from him. With both Anna and Gracie gone, John now faced a different kind of challenge: performance. He had to play the role of the confused, abandoned husband. He had to make the world believe Anna had walked out, taking Gracie with her. So he acted. He told Anna's family that she had left without explanation. He even suggested she might have run away with another man. He kept sending text messages from her phone, trying to mimic her voice. But the messages sounded hollow, robotic, and out of character. Anna's family began to feel uneasy. As days turned into weeks, John kept up the charade. He appeared in public, calm and composed. But the cracks were already beginning to show. Then, in a shocking move, John Sharpe took his deception one step further. He went on national television. In front of cameras, he pleaded for Anna to come home. He sat stiffly, his face expressionless, his words strangely flat. "If you're out there, Anna, just let us know you're okay." To viewers, it was supposed to look like a desperate plea from a worried husband. But to detectives, it looked like something else entirely. There was no emotion in his voice, no panic in his eyes. His performance felt wrong. Forced. Hollow. Investigators were already suspicious. They knew Anna was deeply connected to her family. She would never simply disappear, and she would never abandon Gracie. The text messages only fueled those suspicions. The phrasing was unusual, almost mechanical, nothing like Anna's natural way of speaking. Behind the scenes, police began digging into John's story. They checked financial records. They tracked phone activity. They interviewed friends, co-workers, and family. And with each step, the story unraveled a little more. First, there was the matter of the speargun. Detectives discovered that John had recently purchased one. Not only that, but he had bought additional spears shortly after Anna disappeared. Why would a man whose wife had supposedly run off suddenly need more fishing equipment? Then there were the inconsistencies in his account. One moment, he claimed Anna left voluntarily. Another moment, he implied she had been depressed. At times, he even suggested she might be hiding out with someone new. His story changed depending on who was listening. The more he lied, the deeper he dug his own grave. Meanwhile, Anna's family refused to accept John's version of events. They knew their daughter, and they knew she wouldn't vanish without contacting them. They pressed authorities to keep investigating, to dig deeper. As weeks stretched into months, pressure mounted on John Sharpe. Neighbors whispered, journalists speculated, and detectives closed in. Every digital trace, every purchase, every word he spoke was examined. And then came the breakthrough. Phone records revealed the truth. The text messages from Anna had not been sent from a distant location at all. They had been sent from Mornington, from John's home. The façade was collapsing. Detectives brought him in for questioning. At first, John maintained his story. He said Anna had left him, that he had no idea where she went. He even feigned confusion when pressed about the text messages. But the more they confronted him with evidence, the more his mask began to slip. By now, the public had already turned against him. That awkward TV plea was replayed on news broadcasts, analyzed by body language experts, and ridiculed by ordinary viewers who saw through his act. To them, he wasn't a grieving husband. He was hiding something. And they were right. The walls were closing in, and John Sharpe knew it. He had killed his wife. He had killed his daughter. And the lies he thought would protect him were falling apart one by one. Soon, he would have no choice left but to face the truth. By mid-2004, John Sharpe's carefully constructed web of lies was collapsing. The man who thought he could outsmart everyone, who believed he could lie his way out of murder, was backed into a corner. Detectives had pieced together his inconsistencies, tracked his digital trail, and connected him to the very weapon that had ended Anna and Gracie's lives. The pressure was relentless, and for a man as emotionally hollow as John, it was unbearable. In July of that year, after months of pretending, John Sharpe finally broke. He confessed to killing his wife, Anna Kemp, and their daughter, Gracie. His words were chillingly matter-of-fact. He told police how he had waited until Anna was asleep, then shot her with the speargun. He described how he later killed Gracie, claiming it was to maintain the illusion that Anna had left with her. There was no remorse in his confession, only the cold recounting of facts. For investigators, the confession was the final piece of the puzzle. But for Anna's family, it was devastation beyond words. They had clung to hope for months. Hope that Anna and Gracie might still be alive, that John's strange behavior was simply a misunderstanding. That hope died with his confession. The community of Mornington, too, was horrified. Neighbors who had once seen John as an awkward but harmless man now realized they had lived beside a monster. The press branded him with a name that would follow him forever: the Mornington Monster. The details of the crimes shocked the nation. This wasn't just murder, it was betrayal at its deepest level. A husband who killed his wife. A father who murdered his own child. And then for months looked straight into cameras and lied to the entire country. As the case went to court, prosecutors laid out the evidence in brutal detail. They showed how John had purchased the speargun months earlier, preparing for the murders. They revealed the staged text messages, the TV appearance, and the elaborate lies he told friends and family. Piece by piece, they built the image of a man who was not just a killer, but a manipulator, someone who thought he could perform his way out of suspicion. John Sharpe pled guilty to both murders. It wasn't an act of remorse, but a recognition that the evidence was overwhelming. By confessing, he avoided a lengthy trial, but his fate was sealed. In 2005, the court delivered its verdict: life in prison with a minimum of 33 years before parole. The judge condemned Sharpe's actions as calculated and monstrous, emphasizing the cold-blooded nature of the crimes. "Your conduct was inexcusable," the judge said. "You extinguished the lives of those who should have been able to trust you most." The sentence meant John Sharpe would remain behind bars until at least 2037. He would spend decades in a prison cell, his name synonymous with one of Australia's most shocking domestic murders. For Anna's family, the sentence was little comfort. Their daughter and granddaughter were gone. The pain was permanent. But at least, with John Sharpe imprisoned, he could never harm anyone else. The case left deep scars on the community. It sparked national conversations about domestic violence, hidden abuse, and the disturbing reality that evil can exist in the most ordinary of places. Many struggled to comprehend how a man could turn on his own family with such cold calculation. John Sharpe's story is a chilling reminder of the dangers of deception. For months, he believed he could lie his way out of murder. He thought text messages and staged performances would convince everyone around him. He underestimated the persistence of investigators, the intuition of loved ones, and the power of truth. In the end, his lies didn't protect him. They only prolonged his downfall, making his eventual confession all the more damning. And yet, the tragedy is not in his failure to deceive. It's in the lives lost because of his choices. Anna Kemp was a devoted wife and mother, a woman who deserved love and safety, not betrayal and violence. Little Gracie was robbed of a future, her life stolen before it had truly begun. Today, when people in Australia hear the name Mornington Monster, they don't think of John Sharpe as a clever liar. They think of him as a coward, a man who destroyed his own family and thought lies could shield him from justice. But justice came, and with it, the world saw the truth. As the prison doors slammed shut on John Sharpe, the lesson was clear. No matter how elaborate the lie, no matter how convincing the act, the truth always finds its way to the surface. For Anna and Gracie, the truth came too late. But their story continues to echo as a warning, a tragedy, and a reminder of what can happen when deception replaces humanity. Every crime tells a story, but not every story ends with justice. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next case we uncover. And so the question remains, did John Sharpe ever really believe his lies? Or did he know deep down that the truth was waiting for him all along?